Right, hello and welcome to Accountants are Sexy Change My Mind. Darren, it's really lovely to have you here today, so thanks for coming.
Thank you.
For the listeners, Darren is a business consultant and he is a specialist in employee owned trusts as well, and he's building something particularly special. And I think he's going to be he's going to provide some really valuable insights as to how you can set up your business for exit, but also how you can potentially guide your clients as well. So do listen in, and if you've got any questions at the end, we're going to hand out Darren's contact details so you can get in touch with him there too. So, Darren, that was a very loose introduction, as I did
Yeah.
promise. Would you like to fill in some blanks?
Yeah. So Mobius Capital was set up last year with the intention of buying 100 businesses in the UK over the next 10 years. And the reason why we went down this route was because I've seen a lot of transactions happen in the past, and some good, some bad, and some very ugly. And what I found was the risk of business acquisitions is always on the acquirer, but the seller loses out every time. So when you sell your business, usually what happens is somebody like me comes along and offers you a lot less than what you think it's worth. And then we take the business and we make it worth more, and then we sell it on to the next person. And what happens to that business is then it usually gets sold to the one person you didn't want to sell it to, or it gets swallowed up by a larger company, because the best way of making money is for me to buy a company from somebody who wants to sell it and then sell it to somebody who wants to buy it, and then make that transaction work. The problem with that is usually the business fails. And what we found is, after some research, is that 80% of sellers regret selling their business after the sale. And there's lots of reasons for that. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember speaking to you last time, and I was saying it must be really personal when you get to sell a business because it's homegrown. It's everything. You put all of your energy into it. There's been years of heartbreak and pain, all invested into this, and to see it go to someone else must be quite tough.
Yeah, and it is very personal, because usually most business owners, especially in the SME market, never created a business ready to sell. They built a business for themselves to get out of a job, or maybe to do something a bit different. And a lot of them think when they start up, oh, it's okay, I'll just work forever. And they don't see that there's ever going to be an exit, because they don't plan that far ahead.
Yeah.
But they've loved that business. And I mean, I've used the analogy that it's like it's another child to them.
Yeah.
And you're giving away that child to somebody you don't know, don't trust, for a load of money. And
Is that possible? Because I've got two.
well, you can, but I think it's illegal.
Oh.
Unless you're talking about business, in which case, yeah, have a chat. But it's strange where people will go to their accountants, they'll go to valuers, and especially the brokers, and they'll get very strange valuations for their business. I mean, we had an example of a business that was a one person business. It was one man, and he was arranging to fit windows. He had a couple of subcontractors who were doing the actual physical window fitting, and he was running around selling windows. He didn't manufacture anything. All he'd done was brought them from a manufacturer and then fitted them and got somebody else to fit them. So he was just a middleman. Basically, he was just a
The
salesperson, self-employed
salesperson, yeah.
salesperson. And that business was up for sale for £295,000.
Okay.
And the reason being was that he was making £90,000 a year, and he had a van.
Right. That
But
seems simple enough.
yeah, 90,000 times three, you've
Yeah.
got a van that's worth X, and therefore that's what the business is worth. But the
Right.
problem is that for me to take that business on, I'd have to do his job. And he
Yeah.
was working 100 hours a week. So for that £90,000, he was working 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
And
That's tipping it out of the balance for me.
yeah, and effectively, I'd have to replace him by two people, and each person's probably going to need about £50,000 worth of costs. So now I'm losing £10,000 a year to run the business.
Yeah.
And we explained to him that basically it was the same as if I came to him and offered him a job. And if I offered him a job at £90,000 a year, but he had to work 100 hours a week to make it work. And the benefit is that you have to give me £295,000 to start the job. And he saw the common sense, and obviously the business wasn't worth selling at that point. And we looked at how we could actually then make that business worthwhile. So I've done a bit of consultancy with him and worked with him to show him that actually the way to make that business worth more was to grow it
Yeah.
and make it into something that actually did have procedures, policies, and most importantly, staff that done the work.
Yeah.
Because when you take the head off the chicken, it might run around for a bit, but it's going to die.
Yeah, they do say that though, don't they? So make sure the business can operate without you, and it's drummed into us, but it's rarely achieved.
Very rarely achieved.
Yeah.
And that's where majority of people that buy businesses make their profit, because what they do is they take the owner away. They use the first 6 months of ownership where they have the owner coming in and doing the handover to train somebody to take over the business. And that makes the business immediately more valuable. If I'm buying a business from you and you're the only person in that business, the most I'm ever going to pay is 1 times EBIT, so 1 times your profit margin. So if you're earning £50,000 a year, I might pay £50,000 a year for that. But the only way I'm going to then make money is to get somebody else to do it for less than £50,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but once I've done that, I can sell that business for 3 times EBIT as just a general basic rule. So I've just doubled my money overnight, and that's where people like me make our money. That's where buyers make their money.
Yeah.
But there's better ways of doing it.
I remember when I first started my business, my husband used to get fed up with the word systems and processes, and everything for me was a system and process. I'd come from a sales background. Somewhere along the way, that kind of got lost, and now it's just I like to be creative. But if you're going to do anything, going to scale the business, you have to keep coming back to what can we systemize, what processes can we put in place. Again, it depends on your mindset and what your goal is. If you don't know you're going to sell the business at the end, will this ever become a priority? I don't know.
For the majority of businesses, it's never a priority. You do what you need to do to get through to the next day. And that's where somebody like me comes in, and we look at how to systemize your business. So there's 3 stages. There's processization. So you process your business. So what steps do we have to take? And somebody has a piece of paper to say, I do A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
And then you have process. And from there, you can start looking at systemization, which is where you put in systems to replace some of the steps that people do. And then finally go into automation, which replaces the physical steps that people have to do by using a bot or a robot or something, some way of automating it. But people believe that they can step from nothing into automation.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult step, because you're jumping without knowing what you're jumping into. It's literally jumping into a void of rubbish.
Yeah.
And businesses fail.
With the tech kind of the impact that tech has had on the accounting space over the past 10, 15 years, I would imagine that most people listening to this have gone through that kind of jumping into automation because it sounds so fancy, and then realizing that actually it has to replicate your processes, and it shouldn't. It's not going to just change your life and solve every problem unless you've actually given some time to consider what the problem is in the first place.
Exactly.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day, because there are 3 arms to your business, really.
Yeah.
With scaling and growing businesses to sell, I had a conversation with an accountant the other day who was convinced that there is no market for selling accountant firms. Yet I see people asking to buy them, and I see people scaling their accounting firms through acquisition. So what's your opinions on that?
There's always a marketplace. So any businesses that are fragmented and there's lots of different, small companies, there's always a risk that somebody's going to come along and create a larger group. And the benefits of having a larger group is that you save costs. You don't need to have 15 telephone systems. You have 1, and therefore you get a cheaper deal and all this kind of stuff. But it also down to staff. You can manage more accounts. You can have more money coming through that firm by taking on more customers without the extra cost of extra accountancies and all that kind of stuff, because you don't need lots of accountants. You need lots of administration staff and the people doing the work, and then you need a number of accountants to cover that, and you can make a lot of cost savings. And there's always going to be times when nobody wants to buy anything because they're very fearful. Going into recession, people don't want to buy anything because it's like, well, do we want to grow just yet? Because we don't know where our customers are going to be. Are we going to lose 10% of our customers because they all go out of business?
Yeah.
But there's always, when there's fear, there's always somebody that wants to jump in, because that fear reduces the value of the businesses. And then it's whether or not, if you want to sell, do you want to sell at the price now, or do you want to make your business worth more?
Yeah.
And because there's people that are fearful of the business, there's people that want to sell very quickly. So if you're in accountancy, now is a really good time for you to look at, actually, if I'm feeling fearful today, so are all of my counterparts. Therefore, there'll be some of them that will be so fearful they just want to leave and they want to get out and they want to hand over the keys to let somebody else deal with their customers and just retire and go off to the Maldives and swim with sharks, whatever they want to do.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah. But that means there's an opportunity for people to grow their business through acquisitions and taking on other people's work and grow your business, which then secures your business. Because if there's 10% of customers go out of business, if you lose 10% of your customer base, you're going to be in trouble. If you're working at the moment where your customer base feeds you and gives you a nice profit and you lose 10%, it's not just 10% of your profit, it's 10% of your revenue. And that can have a major impact. Whereas if you then grow your business by 100% and double the size of it and you lose 10%, you're losing a bigger amount, but it's less of an impact because your staff can be protected, your role can be protected, and your profit margins can be protected. So you can grow out of trouble. And this is one of the things that a lot of people make a mistake during a recession, is that they try to shrink to the size of the business. Whereas if everybody does that, there'll be no businesses. But it means that there's lots of people going out of business, lots of people wanting to get out of the business, that you can grow, take on their client base, and grow your agency while it's quiet. Because come 4 or 5 years, everything's back out of recession, everybody's wanting to buy stuff, your business is going to be in a much stronger position and able to buy even more businesses, but also be more valuable to somebody that wants to buy.
Yeah, I think there's it's a scarcity mindset that when recession hits, everybody loses, because they definitely don't. There are winners in there. You just have to be in a viable position to take the opportunities as you see them, and that's the thing that holds people back. There might be opportunities, but they're too scared to take that jump.
Exactly.
With you, as I said, you've got what I can see, three arms to the business. And there was one of them when we had a discussion before that has really caught my attention, because I feel like the values are really aligned with what I hope for the future of the world. So you're a specialist in employee-owned trusts. Now, this has come up for me before with a different company, but I think you're doing it in a really different way. So could you explain this project? You said 100 companies, but what does that mean?
So our plan is to buy the 100 companies, as I said, and the idea is that we're going to buy different companies in different regions and in different sectors. So we have a base of 100 companies that will work collaboratively together to build each other and support each other. And it might mean that we have cost savings because of buying power of a larger group, and it might mean we can actually make cost savings by sharing resources. So if there's an extra resource in one company that they no longer need, they can move them over to another company. And to do that, we thought, right, we need to buy a larger number of businesses. But we also realized that running 100 businesses is completely impractical for one person. Nobody really can,
unless you're an octopus.
Yeah, exactly. And last time I checked, I've only got 2 arms, so I'm not. But we realized actually one of the biggest problems but one of the biggest risks with buying businesses is the staff. When you acquire a business, a lot of staff, especially those that are more capable, are more likely to jump ship and leave the business, which leaves me as a new buyer in a very precarious position, because the best staff have now left. And that leaves me with a bad position that I need to now replace the best staff, and I've lost productivity. So I wanted to find a way of actually buying businesses that actually kept staff in the business. And that's when I came across the EOTs, which is a UK government-run scheme where we create a trust, and the trust will buy 74% of the business. The beneficiary members of the trust are the staff. So they never pay any money towards the business. The business trust buys the business, but they receive 74% of the profits into the trust, and the trust will distribute those profits to the staff.
Amazing.
Which means that the staff tend not to want to leave, because now they're getting involved in the business. They see it as their business. We also then bring people on board to run the business, manage the business, but the staff get a say in how the business is run, which means that they not only have a say, they get a profit, and they see actually what's happening within the business, because we run a completely open book business.
So I suppose they buy in, they start to care about the business, they see everything that they do as a cog in the wheel, as opposed to the single cog itself. So it's a
Yes,
different, I mean, getting up and having that ownership. I mean, I think that's why business owners turn into business owners, because they want that ownership, you know, that it spurs them on. But I think that must be really good for employees, especially the ones that buy into this, you know. It must be good
yeah,
for motivation, their mental health, you know, like it must have a real impact.
it does. And the thing is that there's always some employees that don't want to take the risk. They're like, no, I'd never buy a business. So I don't want to be involved.
Mm.
But they don't have to be. They still take the benefit of it, but
Mm.
they don't have to be nominated to be part of the staff council, for instance. So members of the staff are put onto the board.
Yeah.
So the staff vote in 3 members of staff into the board. They don't have to put their foot forward for that. They don't have to take responsibility.
They can just turn up to work, do the job that they're meant to do, and go home
Yeah,
again.
and receive a bonus of so much money. And there's other benefits to it as well. So the bonus we pay, we can actually give them up to £3,600 per year tax free.
Okay.
So the staff get this benefit effectively for free
Hmm.
and free of tax.
Nice.
But there's also a benefit to the seller because they don't pay any capital gains tax either, because
Okay.
it's seen as a gift to the staff. They actually get zero rated capital gains tax, which
Mm.
means that they sell their business for more money effectively, because the government doesn't take their 20% or 10% if they take on the business asset relief relief money.
Mm.
So that knocks it down to 10%, which is the old entrepreneurs relief. But that's limited in your lifetime to £1 million. So you can only receive £1 million worth of benefit from that system. Whereas
Okay.
ours, you could sell £100 million business, and the £20 million that would go to tax is yours. You keep all of it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So you're on a path to buy 100 companies and have them all operating within this employee-owned trust, and then within the group itself.
Yeah.
The goal for you was to get this working harmoniously. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So everything sort of feeds each other. So we wanted to. So we've got a couple of plans. So we want to do things like living wage for all the staff. We want to do cross training so staff are able to move between businesses, but also with each other. So actually working with each other to find better ways of doing things
Mm.
and to make the world a better place. So one of the things we want to look at is our complete supply chain. So a lot of companies will look at their supply chain and they don't care where they get the stuff from, and it's just a case of how much do we get it for.
Mm.
We want to take it to the next level. So if we're buying stuff from a developing country, so we use Bangladesh as an example. If we buy some goods from Bangladesh to import into the UK, at the moment we have an issue where the people in Bangladesh don't get paid enough,
Right.
and their minimum wage is about £2.99 at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
or equivalent to £2.99. But the buyers push the price down so much that the manufacturers can't pay that price, because we have the whole of their marketplace. They sell all to the UK.
Mm.
Well, we want to turn that around. We want to make sure that the staff get a good wage and a living wage for their area, but also we want to push the idea forward. So we actually do an employee-owned trust for that business as well, and actually buy into that business and help that business be owned by staff, so that
Okay.
it's a
So you're
self-fulfilling
talking about
prophecy.
companies in Bangladesh you want to
We want
instill
to
these.
eventually go worldwide,
Yeah.
because we think that the whole supply chain would be more benefited if we know where stuff comes from.
Mm.
We know that the stuff is being built in a ecologically safe way.
Mm.
We're not damaging the environment. We're not damaging people. And every night we can go to bed and sleep.
Yeah. You know when people say to you, "What's your big, hairy, audacious goal?"
World domination.
That's the typical answer, but I think you actually mean it.
Yeah. Well, it's a different way of doing business. And I think it's something where there's a lot of talk at the moment about making businesses more fair, more equitable.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to actually do it, because I think there's a lot of talk. My methodology will allow us to present that and actually do it, because when you ask staff, how do you want to buy stuff? Where do you want to buy it from?
Mm.
Most staff will say, we want to build it ourselves. We want to keep it in-house. We want to build the company. And that's great. Let's do that. But
Mm.
when we can actually make a cost saving, we can show that actually we can save money by moving stuff to a foreign country.
Mm.
Most companies at that point will then reduce their staff in this country. And
Yeah.
that's why people are reticent to do it. Oh yeah, okay, you're going to ship off all our jobs abroad.
Yeah. It gets
And
such a bad press. I mean, it started with the call centres, didn't it? Like back
yeah,
in the day, as soon as and everyone just shifted all call centres there. Service levels dropped through the floor because training wasn't high enough. Everybody got fed up with like not being understood on the phone because there was as it wasn't joined up. It just
yeah,
happened because of cost. That was the motivator. But I think it feels like what you're saying is there's a different motivator. So it probably won't be as sharp and as fast. It probably will be
no,
a bit more considered.
yeah, exactly. And this is the thing where, so I'm currently, I keep saying that I'm writing a book called the 100-Year Plan,
Mm.
but I do think it's probably going to take me 100 years to write it. But businesses need to start thinking longer term. We have a problem in society where we have a massive societal debt at the moment
Mm.
because people look at short-term solutions.
Yeah.
Look at the NHS, look at water's a really good option, right? The recent thing with sewage going into rivers was done because we could not import the chemicals required into the UK because they're all manufactured in Europe, and because of all the problems we had difficulty importing them.
Yeah.
So the government allowed the companies to dump the sewage into rivers.
Yeah.
But that
I
wasn't the
see.
whole story.
Mm.
The
Okay.
whole story is that they could have actually solved the problem. It would have cost about £100 million to fix the problem so that we didn't need these chemicals all the time and to create better systems.
Mm.
But the company decided not to spend the 100 million and spent £10 million on fines instead.
Right.
The best thing is that they then gave about £100 million to their shareholders.
Yeah. That's a bit painful. It smarts a little, doesn't it?
Yeah, but who's the shareholders?
Mm.
You know, if you have a pension, you probably are a shareholder,
Yeah.
and therefore it was done in your name and my name and everybody else's name, because we're all asking for, we want our pensions to increase because we pay
Mm.
somebody to look after our pensions,
Yeah.
and their job is to make money, not to make good money.
Mm.
And I think we need to start moving towards actually taking responsibility for the money we make, for the
Yeah.
pensions we get, but also the companies need to take responsibility, not just use the excuse of, well, shareholders want. Because if the shareholders want sewage in rivers, then should move into the rivers themselves.
Mm.
And we need to start looking at actually long-term solutions, which means doing better for everybody. And if that means buying stock from abroad at a more expensive rate than what they would sell it to us, then that makes more sense, because at least then they're getting a better environment. And then from the UK, if we do outsource and move stuff abroad, we
Mm.
shouldn't then be reducing the staff. I don't believe that in the idea that we reduce costs by reducing staff. I think we should reduce costs, reduce the need for staff, and then find new jobs for them to do. So a company should be growing to
Mhm.
absorb that new capability. So if you're manufacturing widgets and you can find a way of manufacturing those widgets abroad, then your company in the UK should now manufacture widgets too, or a new version or something, so that you can then increase that company and
Mm.
grow the company. Because I've seen so many companies fail because they keep outsourcing and reducing costs to the point where they can no longer reduce costs, and then there's a problem, and then
Mm.
they cannot grow out of that problem, and they just shut down. And there's so many businesses now in a state where they are primed to be shut down because they've cut too close to the bone. There's
Yeah.
no meat left to grow the business. And the same with accountancy firms, where you see, the accountant will reduce the number of clients they take on, and they'll stop taking on clients as they get older, ready for retirement, and slowly drift their company down,
Yeah.
ready to retire.
Well, they say that winding it down, don't they? That's the
Yeah,
adage, isn't it? I'm going to wind this down when actually maybe there's a better way.
yeah. I'm very good at winding people up. So if you wind that company up and
Mm.
then decide, right, well, in 3 years' time, I want to retire, grow it, make it bigger, make it harder, and then make it more inviting. So when somebody does buy it off you, you get more money,
Mm.
and therefore you continue to earn more money for your retirement.
Yeah.
And that is a brilliant way of then securing the money for your retirement, because so many people in all sectors have their business as their retirement fund, and they
Mm.
think, oh, what, I don't invest in myself. I take money out at the moment. I buy myself a Range Rover. When I retire, the business will pay for me somehow. My kids will take it over. Somebody will take it over. I'll carry on earning money, and I'll be okay. but then they realize that nobody wants to run the business for free, so they have to sell it, and
Mm.
then they don't get as much money as they need, and then their quality of life
Mm.
drops dramatically, and which is why 80% of people regret selling their business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's definitely something that I'm thinking about in my own journey. I've got no idea where I'm going to end up, if I'm honest with you. But
Yeah,
you know, I feel like I'm at the start as well, so I don't need to. We'll get there.
now's the best time to think about it though,
Well,
because now's the time to put that plan in place.
yeah, it's definitely there. The thoughts are there. I just don't know I just don't know where it's going to end up. That's all.
Yeah.
So when you say now is a good time, if you're 10 years into your, or 10 years away from retirement, like, is that a good time? If you're 20 years away from retirement, is that a good time? Or when is too late?
Well, for growth, it's never too late. So to grow your business, regardless when you're going to retire, it's always good. Now is always a good time.
Mm.
But when you think about retirement, for most businesses, if you plan for 5 years, that's a perfect time. Most people will start thinking about their retirement 2 to 3 years ahead.
Yeah.
And the problem there is that they go and see their accountant, and then the accountant will do a rough valuation on their business. Then they'll go to a brokerage who will give them a strange and weird, wonderful calculation just to get their business in. And then it will sit on the market for the next 3 years.
Mm.
And that owner will not do anything, and they'll start to leave the business mentally.
Mm.
And I've seen so many businesses that have been on the market for 3, 4, 5 years, and the owner just ends up shutting the business down
Yeah.
because it can't sell. They haven't done
That's even
anything to
more
make it sellable.
painful. The fact that your business is on the market and nobody wants it, I think that would cripple me.
That, do you know that I think the figures something like 1 in 10 don't sell, only 1 in 10 sell.
Yeah.
Majority of business don't sell.
That's interesting. And that comes down to just not preparing, not making the company valuable enough.
There's multiple factors. So one of the reasons is because brokerages will tend to overstate the valuation. And then when somebody like me comes in, we'll say, no, it's not worth that, but you've already spent half that money. So if
Mm.
you get told your business is worth £1 million, regardless of who you are, what you are, you're going to start thinking, well, if I had £1 million, this is what I'll do with it. Oh, I've got to pay tax. I've got to do this. I'll pay off the house. I'll pay off the mortgage. I'll buy the kids a house each. I'll buy a car. And we're going away on a holiday. And before you know it, you spent the million
Yeah, it's
pound.
gone.
Yeah. And then when you then put it on the market, and then somebody like me comes along and says, actually, you know what? The reason why I can't offer you the £1 million is because this, and this.
Mm.
It's depressing, and it is hard. But the worst case is when I don't come to your business because it looks so bad on paper,
Yeah.
and I'm looking and go, no, it's not even interesting to me. If you've got a small business and there's only maybe one or two of you, it's very hard to sell.
Mm.
Realistically, you're not going to sell that business unless you sell it to somebody that wants a job.
Yeah, somebody who wants a job, or it's like a database type transaction. So
Yeah,
it's a bunch of customers. But that's not going to get you the megabucks.
no, no, it's not. And that's the biggest issue, that there
Mm.
isn't, the money isn't in it.
Mm.
And then do you want to sell it? And then people get to the idea, oh, well, I'll just carry on. And then they're
Mm.
bored of the business. They're already mentally left. They've spent the money that they're now
Don't
realizing they're
have.
not going to get,
Yeah.
and they're even more depressed. So the
Oh,
business
God, it
drops.
sounds awful.
It can be. I've seen people get very, very depressed with
Yeah.
the idea that they've done all this work. They've worked all their life. They've done loads. They've
Yeah.
put every effort in. They've worked 80 hours a week. They've done everything they could have done, and now nobody wants it.
Yeah.
And most
Absolutely
of the reason is because they've
heartbreaking.
left it. Yeah. Especially since this is your baby. I mean,
Yeah.
can you imagine having a child and then somebody coming along saying, nah, that's ugly?
Yes.
It,
As I say, I
you're
have
not allowed to,
two.
right? You're not allowed to say that out loud though. But but people don't like to be told that their business is worthless.
No,
And they don't,
absolutely. I think that would
and
hurt more.
it would, yeah. More than your child's ugly.
Yeah. She'll grow out of it, it's fine. No, but I do. I think that would be absolutely heartbreaking. So I want to kind of, because we're going to run out of time
Yes.
soon, so I want to go over how you can specifically help people. So make this really clear, because there are many arms. So you can come in as a consultant to help people plan for their exit. So that's one
Yes.
arm that you do. You can support accountants with their clients.
Yep.
So if they have clients that want to exit and they're not quite sure how, or they are looking for buyers of the business, then that's a good time to talk to you as well.
Yep.
And then also you can help accountants themselves with structuring their business so they can sell. And when you do
We
buy, if you buy, it goes in. Sorry, I'm messing this up towards the end. I was doing so well.
it's the ugly child bit that put you off.
Yeah, but when you take on a business and you do buy that business, it's more than likely going to go into this. I'm going to call it a cooperative because that's how it
Yeah.
feels to me. So this cooperative environment. So exiting for your clients, exiting for yourself, or joining this cooperative environment. So does that encapsulate everything, or is there anything that you'd like to add to make that super clear?
One of the other things that we do is we try to mix everything together. So we will go into a company that's thinking about an exit, and we will help them grow the business. So we will then grow the business until we get to the point where we'll buy the business, which means we end up buying the business for more money than it's worth at the moment. And it's the best way of explaining it is most people want £1 million for their business. And if you go to a broker, they'll say it's worth 1 million. Realistically, it's worth 750, maybe 500,000. But as a buyer, I want to buy 350. That's it. I might agree 500,000, but I'm going to push you down to about 350,000 for the sale of the business. And then with tax and everything else, you don't get anywhere near the £1 million. But if the business is worth 750 today on paper, and you want to walk away with £1 million in cash, what we'll do is we'll make the business worth more than £1 million. We'll actually take it up to, I think it's about 1.3 million that it works out as the actual figure. But doing that, we'll take a percentage of the business. So we'll take 26% of the business, which is our stake in the business.
Yeah.
We will then convert the business into an employee-owned trust for the other 74%, giving you £1 million to walk away with tax-free.
Fantastic.
So it's a way of actually bringing all of our skills together to grow the business up, to make it worth more than it's worth today, to give the owner what they want as an exit, at the same time as passing that benefit on to the staff, giving us the benefit of the percentage of the business, and everybody wins. The customers win, the staff win, the owner wins, and we win.
Yeah.
And it has to be that way.
You can say that when it comes to the transaction of a business.
No, it's not very often that people feel that they've won at the end of the sale. You know, as I said, 80% regret the sale of the business.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to change that around and make it so selling your business at the end of the day, when you get to that point of you finish with your business, is a normal thing and something that can be profitable and without hurting you, the business, or the staff. Because if a big company comes along and buys your business, which is everybody wants a strategic partner to come in and buy them out, the problem is you're being swallowed. You're not being purchased for the benefits of the business. You're being swallowed for one benefit. There's usually one thing within the business that the larger company wants to swallow up. The rest of your business is usually jettisoned, which means the staff, the processes, procedures, everything. And I've seen businesses that have been acquired for one small part of the business and then the rest shut down.
Yeah.
Everybody else made redundant. We don't care about that because we already do it. We've already got it somewhere else. We don't need that bit of the business. What we wanted is that one client or one, a step into the government contracts or something. And it's so easy just to shut down a business. Yeah. Whereas I think those businesses, if they've got that benefit, will take it with the staff and retain it. We're not looking to create like a Virgin Group where everything's called Mobius. We're not going to change everything's name. Everything's going to have their own local name. Everything's going to be local. The only thing we will do is say it's part of the Mobius Capital Group. Right. So we can actually say that, that they will know that it's part of the group.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then
that must feel so much better for the people who sell their business to see it remain and to stay strong and to know their staff are looked after. And I mean, not everything's going to go perfect. That's an impossibility. No. But it must feel a lot better than just selling it off and not knowing what's going to happen to it.
Yeah, well, majority of business owners I've spoken to, they've always got a member of staff that they love. And that member of staff probably started with them. A lot of the time, it's actually the PA to the owner. Yeah. And it's the person that's, she's worked there all her life. She came in as a 16-year-old because he needed somebody to do some running and all that kind of stuff. And she's worked there.
Yeah.
And on paper, she's the secretary. and she's earning 40, 50 grand a year. As a big business, I'm going to look at that and go, secretary, that much, I can buy a VA for that.
Yeah.
I can get 10 VAs for that.
Yeah, but the wealth of knowledge within that one person is
Yeah.
astronomical.
Yeah.
Reminds me of a lady I used to work with, my old boss actually, Louise Honeywell, and she worked for North Amber, and she joined at a super young age. She's still there today. If you need to know it, she's the person to go and ask. There is no other person in that business, not even the people at the top, that knows as much as she does.
Yeah, and she would be invaluable as part of an acquisition. She's the most valuable person.
Yeah.
But on paper, she isn't. So it's too easy for somebody coming in to miss that person. And even if the owner says, I want to protect that person's job over anybody else's. I've seen a business with 100 employees and they said, I want to support that one person's job.
Yeah.
And that's the only person they really care about. But they're the first person to go because on paper they don't make any sense.
Yeah,
and it's too easy for an acquirer to get rid of that person. Whereas our methodology would take that person and say, right, you actually run the business. Do you want to run the business?
You actually want to run it.
You want to be part of this because we want you to take the reins. We want you to take over. Yeah. And that will really boister them up and actually show them that actually everything they've done has been for a reason. They've earned this. Fantastic. And the amount of hard work that person will put in, from my point of view, and for the rest of the teams, is amazing. And it means the business can run for potentially 100 years, which is our plan. Every business should run for another 100 years.
It's a really interesting topic, but I'm going to cut it here because we could talk about this forever. Yes. But we are going to be doing a webinar together.
Yes.
So by the time this goes out, I will have a link for anybody who wants to come and register for the webinar. The webinar is going to be probably more to do with how to structure the business, and we're going to give you some insights as to how you can grow your own business, structure your own business, and also potentially advice that you can then pass down to your clients as well. So it's going to be worthwhile coming along for those two elements. I'll make sure the link's in the box. But before I let you go, there is a question I always ask at the end of this end of the show, which is, what is the sexiest thing about accountants?
Oh. Well, obviously, the easiest thing is that they usually save you money. If you get the right accountant, then they should actually be part of your business. And the amount of work the accountant can save you if they're doing it right. I mean, there's always the accountant that is purely a number cruncher, and there's obviously bookkeepers that could do the same work for you. But when you get a true accountant, the amount of knowledge they have around finance is amazing. And I'm in finance every day. I'm looking at numbers every day, but I still go back to my finance director because she's an accountant, and she finds things that I've never seen in my life. I'm like, I never even thought to look in there.
Yeah, they know their stuff and they investigate.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you're inclusive as well, because although this show is called Accountants Are Sexy Changed by Mind, we love bookkeepers too.
Yes.
So don't let that, never think we don't. So that's all we've got time for. So it's been a real pleasure. So thanks ever so much for coming on. I'm going to drop your contact details into wherever this goes out. I'm also going to drop the link to the webinar wherever this goes out. Come and join us. But thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
No problem. Thank you.